and use it as a bit of a dry run, and probably use it to we were going to record the session, and then I know other Qlik people in Colorado who are interested, and so I'll probably share the session with them and be like, hey, this is like the kind of stuff that we're chatting about. And I think once we get a few people interested, we can set up like an in-person event. Um, but yeah, what I was hoping we could do today is at least work out who's here. It sounds like we've got a few of the JBS folks. Are you guys all from JBS? Alan, I know you are, and Srijan.
Yeah, I think so. Vala.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at that background. That's the winner.
Wow, fun.
Yeah,
So
that
relaxing.
It's
I didn't even know you could do that.
I'm just going to be looking at that the whole time. It's kind of mesmerizing. And then so Jim Smith is actually from the Qlik side, and he is very helpful to have. I can't imagine Jim's going to want to join this all the time, but he knows everything about Qlik. So it's great to have him here, and we can pummel him with any questions we have.
As soon as the pummeling starts, Scott, I'll probably have to drop. I just wanted to tell you that.
But yeah, I think like kicking this off as like a virtual event, I think what we might try and do going forward is kind of mix it up and do some in-person stuff and some virtual events. And I think the benefit of doing some of the virtual ones is like we can actually do a bit of show and tell and do some presentations and talk about new features and new modules. Hopefully, as the group grows a bit, like I don't want to like drive all the content. I think like Pomerol's keen to like host it and administer it, but hopefully in time, other people are keen to do some presentations and show off stuff that maybe they're working on. So yeah, we'll just kind of see how it evolves. Well, just out of curiosity, at JBS, what kind of roles do you guys have when it comes to Qlik? You know, are you sort of? I'll just let you. I'll let you go for it. I mean, Alan, what do you do at JBS when it comes to Qlik?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot. So, I mean, overall, I posted it too in our developer chat. So we probably got a few other people joining. So like Scott, who's just asked, he's in finance. We got other people who are like in the what's called regional side of the business and whatnot. So like on my end though is we look at the whole Qlik environment. So we manage everything from the data connections, user access, trainings, yada yada yada, right? And then we have other departments there where they're mainly focused on their department. So building apps out on their end. And I mean, Vala, you can touch on this as well if you'd like. Scott, yeah, if you want to jump in too, you're more than welcome to.
Hey, what are we talking about? Just giving an overview of stuff that we do.
Yeah, so like specific to yours guys' end.
Oh, I mean, it's just a lot of Qlik stuff. So I work with the AP, AR, and credit teams, and so we have both sides of the business. We keep things in the same stream, but very different apps. Most stuff is controlled through section access, not just the AD groups. But yeah, I mean, we use standard objects, we use vislib objects. I don't know, we've got a lot of stuff that, like what Alan was saying in terms of this other guy, Volib, I don't know if he's here yet or not. Yeah, he is, he's down there. So he's more of a specific to a business unit or a particular type of protein that JBS does, specifically beef. But for me, I'm considered shared services, and so I deal in all of the protein types: chicken, pork, beef, bacon, retail ready, value added, all the different things. So it's a lot more broad and high level on my side of things than it is for Volib or some of the other folks on our team who look down into like invoice level, material level, that sort of thing. So, but otherwise it's just regular Qlik stuff. But is that Is that the answer, Alan?
That's the correct answer.
Hit the nail.
No, it's just it's always interesting to find out kind of. I imagine in time as this group grows, we'll probably end up with lots of different people who interact with the Qlik ecosystem in different ways. Like some are sort of BI managers, and others are developers who are keen to talk to other developers and learn, and other people sit more on the business side. It's always interesting to know kind of who's here and where to sort of pitch any of the conversation at. Do you mentioned, Scott, and Alan, I think you'd mentioned this to me in the past, that you guys use a lot of Vizlib. Did you also end up using Strata?
So we did a light testing on our end on our team side, but we never released it for the rest of the developers.
Yeah. How did you find it? I never really dove in deep. I only learnt just the 10,000-foot view of it. I never actually went in and built anything myself.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't extensive testing. It was literally, I mean, at a quick glance to me, it just seemed like a massive KPI designer with some cool little additions here and there for it. So
yeah,
that was it. Yeah, we never really got it fully installed and did like a PLC though.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I haven't actually met anyone else who is using it. Like I met other people who were kind of evaluating it or talking about it, but yeah, I'm curious as to whether it will sink or swim. It's a pretty competitive landscape for data visualization tools.
Yeah, especially with the AI now. I mean, there's 2 people at the meetup who started their own visualization tools using AI. So yeah, it's pretty packed right now in the market.
Yeah, it's interesting. So one of the benefits of these virtual sessions is as a Qlik partner, obviously we're kind of up to speed on everything Qlik's doing. So we can sort of do a bit of show and tell of new products as they get released and stuff like that. But I imagine if we have some in-person events, I wouldn't imagine having any kind of formal agenda. It would be purely just chat and kind of social and a bar tabs that Qlik pays for. Hey, Jim. But I was going to do a quick walkthrough of Qlik answers today, like a really high walkthrough. But have you guys, do you know much about it? Do you have access to it? Have you?
Yeah, so I mean, we had a preview, I think it was like a month ago at this point of it. And it was like a high level. I think they just uploaded some documents and just kind of showcased what it was capable of. I haven't been keeping up with it on my end though, so I don't know if there's any new updates or changes they've made.
I mean, it's only just been released GA, so I'd say it's still in its version 1, like nothing new has come. But I can jump in and I'll show you guys what the UI and the UX kind of looks like. Yeah, it might just be interesting to see, just to get a feel for what it can do. So, I mean, I've got a couple of slides here just to sort of set the context, but I'm sure everyone kind of knows that Qlik Answers is essentially like a Gen AI powered assistant. So I guess that's the end of the road. That's the piece that you're building for consumption. And I guess the problem Qlik's trying to address here is that so the quote from Gartner goes, I think 80% of your data is unstructured in your organization, and so they're trying to create a user-friendly way for someone who is on the business side to access that information and find insight in that information. So it's I guess it's called retrieval augmented generation, because what it's trying to do is augment or facilitate that retrieval of like a needle in a haystack. So if people ever ask me like, what are you guys using this for? I typically state two use cases. We're either trying to find a piece of information that's like a needle in a haystack. It's sort of a term or a condition that's somewhere in these 1,000 PDF files, or we're trying to generate a piece of unstructured data. So we've got a whole lot of information and we want to summarize or bring that together, or generate a piece of unstructured data. So it's kind of like finding something in amongst a ton of unstructured data, or generating something. So, and like a lot of people will have used ChatGPT to like, summarize this documentation, or summarize, a long piece of text, and get something that's like short and consumable. Yeah, but the product came from the acquisition of a company called Kindy. So they kind of took it the first few miles and really built it, and Qlik has folded it into their cloud platform. So it's only going to be available in Qlik's cloud platform. I believe, I don't think it's going to be available within the on-premise platform. Jim, you can probably confirm that.
Yeah, you are
Yeah.
correct on that, Scott. There's not going to be a client managed version of Qlik Answers. It's going to be SaaS-based or Qlik Cloud only.
Yeah. So probably the piece of this that is where, the real value for customers, I think, is the fact that this thing's pretty much pre-built, and I'll kind of show you that in a second. It's a very, that like the user experience of building a knowledge base and then creating a chatbot assistant is extremely easy, compared to what's actually happening under the hood, which is very complex. I haven't digested this diagram, but what I read from this is that what Qlik is doing along the top seems relatively simple, but if you were to kind of try and build this workflow yourself, it would cost you a fortune and take a lot of time. So let me just jump in and show you guys the UX. So like in your Qlik Cloud, and have you guys switched over to using the newer navigation layout?
Yeah, the new UI. Yeah, but I mean, essentially though, still hybrid. So
Yeah.
on-prem is still a big focus on our end. But yeah, the new UI has been enabled. Took a little bit of getting used to it, but yeah.
Well, how do you, just out of curiosity, like how are you guys hybrid? Like, is it different teams, or is it like, what does hybrid mean for you? Like who's in the cloud and who's on-prem?
So I mean, it's gonna be like wave migration. So we're still working on the first wave and moving those certain business units up there for testing, and then get all the bugs sorted out, and then keep progressing forward.
The bugs will never go away, Alan.
So it's a good time. It means I always have a job, so can't complain.
So if you go into create, I guess there's two new objects or two new assets that are in here. So let me find them. Where are we? So the first will be a knowledge base, and the second will be an assistant. And so these two guys together is kind of what makes your solution. So the first thing you do is you build a knowledge base. So, you essentially just hit create new knowledge base. You can add files in here manually. So you could go and upload files, and these would be like text files, PDFs, PowerPoint files. There's a pretty wide range of formats here, but essentially these are like your common unstructured data sources that you'll have around your business. So you might drag some files in there manually, just as a kind of an experimentation exercise, or to test, or as a one-off. Typically, what you'd probably end up doing is using a data connection. So imagine if you had like a folder in SharePoint or something that had like customer contracts or vendor contracts or price lists or something like that that's like constantly growing. Typically, you'd create a data connection to that folder. And I can show you what that would look like if we edit the configuration. So here, like we've set up a connection to a folder in SharePoint, and you kind of set up these rules, which dictates like how should I go in and read the files within this folder structure. Then you can also set up a schedule of how often you want the knowledge base to go back in here and re-index and look for new files. So point being is it's kind of a click, click, click type of interface. The data connection's pretty familiar because you've set them up all over the platform in app automation and Qlik data analytics. And then, yeah, you're automating that process of refreshing data into your knowledge base. So once you've sort of set this up, it's pretty hands-off. So once you've got a knowledge base, you go and tell Qlik to go and read all the data and index it. And then that knowledge base is ready to use. So the next asset is setting up an assistant. So if I jump over into an assistant here, essentially all you really need to do here is link the assistant to one or more knowledge bases. So you can kind of imagine that you might end up with knowledge bases that are very like subject specific or departmentally specific. Like you might have vendor contracts, customer contracts, price lists. It might be split by business divisions, things like that. And you can probably start to see like where some of the security and governance comes in, because you're really controlling who has access to the knowledge base and the space that that knowledge base lives in. So that's kind of the access and governance model. But yeah, all we've really done here is connected this assistant called Pomerol AI to this knowledge base. And then we can go ahead and start asking it questions. So like we've built a knowledge base here that has, I think, about 1,500 documents that are all based around, it's like a British Railways use case with all about rail safety and trying to help engineers and researchers who are designing new rail projects like rail crossings or stations, who are trying to find information about rail safety across the country. So you can probably see I've got a couple of questions that I'd ask this just before I jumped on here. So like I can ask it a question like this: what is the safest design for a rail crossing? And it's very much like a chat GPT type of interface. So you pump in your question, it'll log the history of that question. It'll give you an answer, and then you can look at where those answers came from. So it'll tell you like the documents that the answer came from. So it was drawn from 2 separate sources. You can go and like download those documents if you want. But you can also get more specific. So like if I go and extend this question to sort of say, okay, like what is the safest design for a rail crossing, but take a step-by-step approach in your response, cite the sources, give reasoning, for example. Hopefully this changes the way the assistant responds. So you can see like the first answer is just a bit harder to kind of digest. It's just like a big chunk of text. And typically what you're wanting is something that's like distilled into bullet points, or is, presented in a certain way for a certain type of audience. So yeah, again, you can go and see the sources, download the sources, and for an administrator, you can start to see all the questions that someone or people have asked of your assistant. You can go and, like, if I think this is a really good answer or a poor answer, I can give it a thumbs up, thumbs down. I can also, I can give it a thumbs up or thumbs down. And then as an administrator, you can kind of access this information from the back end. So typically, we're looking at where people have said, hey, this is a crap response, and we're trying to understand why, like maybe the data's out of date or, whatever. But we can start to then go back and tune the knowledge base and improve the knowledge base to try and, respond to any negative feedback. Likewise, if we're getting really good signal on certain responses, we can add more data into the database that, you know, leans into the types of responses people are enjoying. But that's kind of it, really. Like, it's, I must admit, like, from a user experience perspective, it was a bit kind of ridiculously simple to set up. Like, you could literally build this, everything I've shown you here today, in about 5 minutes. In fact, the hardest piece of this whole thing was creating the data connection to SharePoint and getting that to work. The actual Qlik answers thing was pretty solid. You do have to watch, like, you know, obviously it's a licensed product and it has limitations, and so the limits are around, like, how big your knowledge base can be, and then how many questions your users can ask the assistant in a monthly period. So if, you know, anyone who's administering this kind of has to keep a close eye on, you know, like, if one of your developers goes and builds a knowledge base that has, you know, 50,000 documents in it, you kind of have to understand why and whether that's adding any value. Yeah, there's very high limits on the number of questions that can be asked. So, like, if you're hitting that, it's kind of a good problem to have because people are engaging with it. But yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. I mean, like, as we mentioned before, like, this is definitely version 1. Like, I think it's pretty slick. Like, it works. I think what everyone needs to work out is just, like, what are the valuable use cases, so that it moves from being a flashy toy that's really interesting to something that people are prepared to invest time and take on board and actually use, you know. Like, you don't want it to be the next Strato. But yeah. I mean, does anyone have any questions about the product or how it works or anything? Well, I obviously have. I probably told you everything I know about it, so don't ask me any hard questions.
So this is Scott again. We are currently doing a pilot program for Microsoft Copilot, their, you know, chat AI thing. And so I think there's, like, I don't know, 20 or 30 of us in the company, 1 or 2 people from each division that are testing it. And one of the things that I've been trying to do with it, so there's 2 pieces to it without going too in depth, but there's the web facing version and there's the like your environment facing version, right? So it looks at all your documents and all that kind of stuff, which from a business perspective is awesome. And I'm doing different stuff to try to test that out and see if it makes sense, because it's an add-on to your Microsoft 365 thing, like for each individual user or whatever. So I had asked Alan's boss, Marcio, who's the head of the BI team, in a call that we were on. I was like, hey, is there a way that we could hook this stuff up to Qlik? We use SAP as our main ERM, and we have Business Warehouse, which attaches onto that. And so I was like, if we can get this in our environment, like, maybe there's a way that we could hook this up to some of these other things, and we could start asking questions about, you know, the data that's in there. I've already used the web-facing version to try to help me with some script when I run into problems. It's not right most of the time, but it gets me close. And you know, so that's beneficial. But to have something like this that's, like, specifically in Qlik is something that I'm looking forward to, if we can get that in our environment. But in your uses with this so far, like, I saw you ask the question here and stuff like that. Can you ask specific questions about, like, the data sets that are in there? Like, let's say you have access to 100 different QBDs and you don't know where a field is, but maybe you know where it, like, what it's called. Would you be able to search the AI chat for that and have it like look up and catalog what's in it, or is it only more of like a chat based kind of thing?
So at the moment, it's very, I would say that Qlik Answers is very kind of like, what's the word? It's very kind of ring fenced off to the side. And it's essentially like, it's only really using the knowledge base that you create to surface answers using the chat bot attached to that knowledge base. And so at the moment, like, unless you built a knowledge base that had like all of the metadata from your Qlik tenant, which is possible, you know, and that's kind of an interesting use case. You could actually load in like a glossary, report glossary, or like some of the metadata from your Qlik tenant and put this on top of it to try and find, you know, measures or dimensions or fields or tables or whatever. But yeah, long story short, the Qlik Answers product at the moment is sort of, it's not really embedded into the structured world of Qlik where you have QVDs and script and models and all the rest of it. It's very detached. However, I think, and the reason I pulled this slide up is kind of, that's what everyone's asking for, is like, well, I actually want to ask a question that's like when was the last time this customer purchased this product from us? And when they do that, do they typically pay on time? And so often you've got a business question and the answer might come from structured data or it might come from unstructured data. And what you really want to do is you want the assistant to work that out and then go and look in the right place to bring you an answer. And that is kind of where Qlik is heading, is to try and bring these two channels together. So yeah, so you can essentially, you could ask a question and it will work out whether it should answer that using a knowledge base of unstructured data or whether it should refer to your structured data. So like, have you guys used the Insight Advisor feature in Qlik Sense?
I'm not gonna lie, I put sheet menus on a lot of my apps. I go right in and I just turn it off.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's never worked properly for me, and maybe it's user error. But yeah, it always just sits there and spins and doesn't actually get me anything. And so I don't know if it's disabled in our environment or something like that, but it's never worked for me. So I just turn it off.
It's not the first time I've heard that. But the only reason I bring that up is because I'm not suggesting that Insight Advisor is what they're about to deliver as the way to ask questions of structured data. But I imagine that's the starting point, is like, hey, we've got this tool. It's kind of a bit half-baked, like no one's really using it. But I assume that's the starting point, and Qlik's probably going to try and leverage what they've got, make it a lot better. I think one of the problems with Insight Advisor was always that you need to invest a little bit of time in training it, you know, through like the terminology and the logical model. And I don't know if I don't know if people were always clear on the fact that you really needed to do that. You know, I've had the same experience where I've asked questions of apps, you know, and been frustrated at the response. But I must admit, like, I often haven't taken the time to train it. But anyway, I think it's interesting, like you're looking at Copilot, because like it's pretty powerful, right? I mean, it's being able to search or ask a question and have it go across all sorts of Microsoft services, you know, like all of your document repositories plus BI tools and data sets and everything. I mean, it's pretty powerful. I don't know
Yeah,
if you
definitely.
Were you asking like whether you could get Copilot to also look at Qlik?
Yeah, so not necessarily like the individual QBDs, but there was some conversation in the initial calls that we were on about how you could connect it to some of the larger, uh, corporate systems that exist, like Oracle, SAP, different stuff like that, and how Microsoft is working to integrate those sorts of things. Um, and so that's kind of where it stemmed from, was when they brought that up and they were talking about SAP, because Business Warehouse is like a sidecar to that. Um, I didn't know if maybe we could get that in there because we generate all of our, and Alan, correct me if I'm wrong, but um, all of the files that we create come out of, looks like he's not on the call anymore. Oh yeah, he is, he's there. He hit his picture. So we generate all of our QBDs using generators from sources in Business Warehouse. And so if we were able to get Copilot in there, it could look potentially at the raw data. It might not be able to look into QBDs in general, but at least maybe it could tell me like, I'm in SAP, so I need something from, this T code or this field name, or something like that. And it could tell me if it's in Business Warehouse or something. And then, I could go from there in terms of my digging, but yeah, I don't know its validity. Like I said, right now for our environment, it's only within the Office 365 software offerings.
Yeah.
And so, it's cool to be able to say, hey, write me a document in the style of this other one. Maybe somebody made something up, I don't know, customer statement letters or something, I don't know, for example, a couple years ago, and I just want to update it, but I like the way they wrote it. I could do something like that and it would read, all that kind of stuff. If I have a PowerPoint or Excel that I've exported out of Qlik, it could read those numbers in that fashion. But outside of that, yeah, for right now, it's just the Office 365 stuff.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting use case, though. I hadn't come across that or thought of that. I think, I think one of the other benefits of the like trying to establish this meetup group is to get like people who are actually using the product kind of can use this as a bit of a way to surface like feedback, ideas, complaints, whatever. And we can actually feed that back into Qlik through our relationships there. So yeah, it's a very interesting use case. It just made me think of something else, which was so a lot of people have been asking, like, can I use Qlik answers to ask questions of like my data or a data model? And the answer is kind of no, but yes, you can kind of wing it. So what some people have been doing is imagine if you had I don't know, you had like a finance suite of dashboards or KPIs, and maybe you've got 100 metrics in there and you track them, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. You could actually get Qlik to programmatically generate all of these KPIs and store them into a document, into a text file or something. And you could feed that into the knowledge base, and the knowledge base could read that file every day and just take the latest KPIs. And that way you could then ask it natural language questions like, what are my month to date sales for this particular customer? And as long as that was in your file that you were feeding into Qlik Answers, that would be able to surface that information. And so now you could actually start to get this mashup of like, okay, well, like what are year-to-date sales and like what types of products are they purchasing, and like what, can you share the product specifications for those? So, it's actually surfacing structured and unstructured data together, but you've had to kind of fudge it in the background by getting the structured data in the knowledge base in a way that it's actually ready to consume, because the Qlik Answers engine can't go and like aggregate up all the numbers and go, okay, here's your year to date revenue. It needs to find the answer. So does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. My initial thing, like whether it be Copilot or Qlik Answers or whatever, in terms of looking into the data, I think comes initially from my use case from the finance side, from business wide. And like because I'm not in individual divisions and my department oversees all of, or works with all of the business units, there's so many different aspects to our business, and I'm sure every business in general, that when I'm trying to find an answer, because like we have meetings every week with all the different divisions to talk about their customers. We meet with sales, talk about who's paying, who's not paying, who's running into credit limits, all that kind of stuff. And so all these people, well, I want to see this for me, but then somebody from the pork team wants to see something else or whatever. So, always trying to kind of tailor our apps so that one, it's most useful for us, but two, it's available to, hundreds of other people within the business. And so my initial question about looking up for QEDs and stuff like that comes from that, because I don't know where all of these different things are, that exist for materials or procurement information or different things like that, because the files that I commonly use is just finance data, right? So I've got GLs, I have totals, I have customers, and that's about it. So that we can aggregate invoices and do collections and payables and stuff like that. So that's where that side of it comes from. But like being in the meetings, if and I don't remember from our demo that Alan was talking about like a month ago that we got, if it's going to be user facing or just on the dev side. But I know that if it does get to the point of being user facing, just from the meetings that we get asked from folks in our different divisions, the natural language, being able to ask questions, would be the main 99.9% of the use cases that Qlik Answers would be used for. And we have a lot of those numbers as like main metrics, whether they're stored in variables or they're in KPI objects or different stuff like that. So with what you're saying with the mashup, maybe that's something that can it would be able to access. But yeah, that regular language asking questions from a user standpoint would definitely be like the big thing, like for users. So I don't know if they're headed that direction. I don't know if either. But to be able to aggregate some of that data that's on the front end.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know much about exactly kind of what we can expect to see and when, but I will definitely be keeping my ear to the ground, and I'll pass on whatever we find out. Something else I actually forgot to mention is like where like I'm viewing this, within the Qlik Qlik Cloud hub at the moment, but really this chat assistant is made to be embedded wherever in your business systems the person needs an assistant. So like whether it's in the ERP system or in the CRM or in the forecasting tool or whatever, it's not really intended necessarily to be used within the Qlik hub here. So yeah, it took me a second to kind of get my head around that and think and like kind of break the use case away from trying to put this into a Qlik app. It was more like put this into Salesforce and ask questions in Salesforce, like across all my accounts. Do we have any other opportunities that mention this product or work with this partner or something, yeah.
Yeah, I think AI in general is quite interesting in how it's going to be able to, besides all the funny pictures that it can make or the deep fake videos that are going to cause problems down the road. its ability to help business and actually be, beneficial for people's lives. I think we have a ways to go in the public sector, but I think the opportunities are exciting for sure. So a lot of these version ones, whether it be Copilot or Qlik Answers or ChatGTP or whatever the other ones are, I don't know if in the first iteration they're going to get it, but I think in 10 years, um, it might be a pretty incredible tool.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely it's in its infancy. Yeah, I mean, you guys are part of a pretty large enterprise, so one of the first things that's going to come up with a tool like this is just how is it controlled, access, governance, and that there is a good answer for that, but there's probably a lot to come on that front to get some more granular control around knowledge bases and assistance and yeah, interesting. I think there's a lot to come there. I was just thinking we'll probably be planning some events in Denver in the near future, but yeah, we'll probably wait and see who else joins this Qlik meetup group and work out kind of based on who's in the group, like where it makes sense to do these meetups. So yeah.
Actually, that was a question I was wondering too when Alan sent out the invite. He was talking about it a couple of weeks ago. I think that it was coming up. What's your guys's connection to Qlik? Are you like a Qlik partner? Do you work for Qlik specifically, or how's that work for you guys?
Yeah, we're a partner. So we're a data and analytics consultancy. And yeah, we've been a Qlik partner for 10 years or so. And but we also work with other platforms. We work with Microsoft a lot. We do a lot of data engineering work, especially with Snowflake and Matillion. And we do a lot of data science and machine learning work now as well. Like a lot of it's with Qlik AutoML, but also with Data Robot, SageMaker on the AWS side. So yeah, we kind of do a lot of stuff, but we've got a few people in Denver. And so like our company's very spread throughout the US, but we've sort of got a few little hubs. And so we're trying to get some of these Qlik meetup groups restarted just because it's just a helpful way for like the people that are actually using the product to, network with others, get their questions answered. And like we're kind of working in this ecosystem every day. So it's pretty easy for us to do like show and tell of products or features or updates. And it's not really, it's not a ton of effort from our side. So we're sort of, going to act as like the gatekeeper or the administrator for the group. But what we're kind of hoping is that the group membership kind of grows and just sort of takes on a bit of a life of its own. And yeah, we'll just see where it goes. But we do like Qlik will support these groups. And so that's what Colette was alluding to. So we can do some in-person meetups and like they'll cover the cost or at least part of the cost for doing that. So that's a plus.